These are the last pages of this book that we just wrote, and I thought it might be useful for an event like this. A lot of this book and a lot of our project, I haven't really described this yet today, focuses on a kind of new, part of what we're involved with is trying to rethink our political vocabulary. In some ways thinking of new terms, but also reclaiming old terms that have become corrupt and useless. For instance, the concept of democracy, I'm sure that most of you cringe when I say that word, because democracy now mostly means, when the US president says it usually means they're going to bomb somebody. Democracy at best means something like going and electing somebody every 4 years. But we think the concept is important enough to try to reclaim the concept and make it mean what we think it ought to mean. Similarly with communism, it's been our project to try to reclaim the concept of communism. That too, when you read about communism in the press, it usually is posed as state control of all of society, some sort of totalitarian regime, and we think of it as exactly the opposite, as the abolition of the state, and the construction of a real democracy. In fact, the two terms for us, communism and democracy, are inextricable. We also, in addition to trying to rethink the terms of the political vocabulary, we're also thinking about the new affects, or the ways of thinking of the affects of it. So a lot of our work, this also can annoy people because it doesn't seem like them, is about love and happiness and joy as properly political concepts. When we talk about love, people feel often that I've been too long with Italians, that this is just an Italian way of thinking politics. And about joy and happiness too. These are proper political concepts that have been lost, that do refer to the construction of community. Happiness, for instance, even in the French and US 18th century sense of the construction of institutions as happiness, not as a private pleasure. So this last bit is about laughter, which goes along, of course, with love and joy and happiness. So we were thinking about laughter and how laughter characterizes the movements, in a way trying to learn from and figure out how laughter in the movements today as a primary political affect is what's going on. And it also, for us, characterizes and summarizes in some ways what we're trying to do. So, so let me just read you the last part, see if it makes sense, and then I'm going to stop. In the face of this arrogance of power, the arrogance of power we face today, the enormous forms of domination, the most adequate response, rather than lamenting our poor lot and wallowing in melancholy, is laughter. Laughter, mind you, is a very serious matter. It's not consolation for our weakness, but an expression of joy, a sign of our power. Michel Foucault says, "Don't think that one has to be sad to be a militant, even if the combat is abominable. It's the connection of desire to reality and not its retreat into forms of representation that possesses a revolutionary force." That was Foucault writing in the preface to Deleuze and Guattari's Anti-Oedipus, talking about revolutionary force of desire and the joy of being a militant rather than the sadness that I think many generations had felt. The process of instituting happiness will constantly be accompanied by laughter, and laughter in three ways here now. Ours is first of all a knowing laugh, which accompanies our realistic critique of the dominant powers. The rulers, the destroyers, the corruptors are not as strong as they think, and we're more powerful than they will ever know. Increasingly today, in the biopolitical context, the one divides in two. That is, productive forces are becoming ever more autonomous in their production of common goods, such as ideas, codes, affects, images, and the like. Capital still manages to expropriate the common that is produced, and ruling powers continue to exert their control, but we laugh with recognition of what their weakness portends for our future. Ours is also a laugh of creation and joy, anchored solidly in the present, our free and equal access to the common, through which we together produce new and greater forms of the common, our liberation from the subordinations of identities through monstrous processes of self-transformation, our autonomous control of the circuits of the production of social subjectivity, and in general our construction of common practices through which singularities compose the multitude, are all limitless cycles of our increasing power and joy. While instituting happiness, our laughter is as pure as water. Ours is finally, though, a laugh of destruction, the laugh of armed angels, which accompanies the combat against evil. happiness has its dark side. Spinoza describes the joy of destroying what does harm to a friend. This destruction has nothing to do with hatred, from which indeed nothing good can come. And this joy has nothing to do with Schadenfreude, enjoyment taken from the misfortune of others. The destruction of what causes harm is secondary to the increase of power and joy released from its removal. The extirpation in ourselves of our attachments to identity, and in general the conditions of our enslavement, will be extraordinarily painful, but still we laugh. In the long battles against the institutions that corrupt the common, such as the family, the corporation, and the nation, we will spill no end of tears, but still we laugh. In the struggles against capitalist exploitation, the rule of property, and the destroyers of the common through public and private control, we will suffer terribly, but still we laugh with joy. They will be buried by our laughter.